Welcome to Conversations from St. Norbert College, a program that invites you into discussions taking place in your community on today's local and global issues. Now, your host for Conversations from St. Norbert College, the Dean and Academic Vice President of the college, Michael Marsden.
Good evening. My name is Michael Marsden, and I'm your host for this edition of Conversations from St. Norbert College. Our special guest this evening is President-elect Thomas Kunkel, who will succeed President William Hynes as the 7th President of St. Norbert College on July 1st, 2008. An eminent journalist and scholar, President-elect Kunkel is currently serving in his 8th year as Dean of the Philip Merrill College of Journalism at the University of Maryland, where he's also President of the American Journalism Review, a national magazine published by the college. Among Mr. Kunkel's written and edited books are Genius in Disguise, a critically acclaimed biography of New Yorker editor Harold Ross. The volume was a New York Times Notable Book of the Year in 1995. Additionally, he has edited some of the best nonfiction writers in America, including 7 Pulitzer Prize winners. Mr. Kunkel was born and raised in Evansville, Indiana, where he received his undergraduate and master's degree from the University of Evansville. He's married to Deborah, his wife of 32 years, and together they have 4 daughters. Tom, welcome to our program. We're
Thank
really
you, Mike.
pleased to have you here and have you as our president-elect at St. Norbert College.
Well, Debbie and I are thrilled. Thank you very much.
I hope that we've been as hospitable as we promised we are. You know, so.
More so.
Good.
Yeah.
As you make this transition, I know there are a lot of things you have to complete back at the University of Maryland.
Yes.
And I was wondering what some of those projects are that you at least have a few months to wrap up.
Well, I appreciate you reminding me about that. I have a lot to do at Maryland before I get away. And it's a variety of things. We have some searches going on that we need to finish up. And now that looks like they'll be searching behind me. And one of the things I'll want to do is try to help recruit some people that I think would be good, who might be interested in the job.
To serve as dean.
To serve as dean. We are doing some interesting programming kinds of things. For instance, we are sponsoring a conference about digital media in China in May, and we're doing the planning of that. I expect to be over there for that. And in addition, we're working with our partner university in Hangzhou, China, on a joint degree that would offer our Master of Arts in Journalism in China.
Very good.
We're about to ask for approval from the National Ministry in China for that. So it's just a lot of things like that. I'm sure there are more things to tie up than I'm going to be able to do.
You break ground of the new building fairly quickly?
That's right. Thanks for reminding me. We have a new building that will be breaking ground at the end of May, something we've been working on for a long time, and I need to raise another $1 million or $2 million
for that before you leave?
Before I leave. So much to do, not enough time.
When is that building going to be completed then?
We are hoping that it will be done in the fall of '09 in time for the fall semester. Okay. It's that will be a quick build, but we think there's a chance.
Good. Well, good luck with those projects.
Thank you.
I realize that you're just beginning to assess things at St. Norbert College since you're spending a few days on campus, and every chance you get, you'll be back, I know, from time to time. But what do you think at this point might be the top 3 or 4 challenges that you're going to be facing right away, almost the day you take office?
Well, I think the main thing that I seem to be hearing is that people are hopeful that we can continue to raise money for the pressing needs that St. Norbert College has. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a very well-run institution with a lot of resources, but there are buildings here that have been maybe somewhat outdated. A science building is badly needed. You're getting ready to break ground on a new library, state-of-the-art library, which is very exciting. But more importantly, we want to make sure that, for instance, we can help students of any background, who really feel like St. Norbert is for them. We want to be able to help them afford this terrific education. We want to be able to help people who are from Wisconsin and who want to stay in Wisconsin when they graduate, maybe until they won't have to go somewhere else to forge their career. So I think fundraising is going to be an important issue. I think that St. Norbert's unique identity, its mission and heritage, the Norbertine and Catholic and liberal arts values, is something that you and President Hynes have worked very hard on reinforcing. I think that's going to be an important part
continuing challenge.
Continuing to do that. I think that continuing your enrollment management, continuing to make sure that we're bringing in the very top students, maybe increasing the enrollment just a little to maximize what we have. I think that'll be an issue. But for the for the immediate future, my goal will be just to sort of do a lot of listening and find out what's on people's minds.
There's a lot to absorb. I'm
Absolutely.
Sure at that time, yeah. How do you see yourself working in the community, at least initially?
Well, I enjoy that sort of thing, and I know that St. Norbert is tremendously respected within the greater Green Bay community, which is, I think, that's wonderful and also something that we can build on. And so I would expect to do a lot of external outreach, talk to a lot of groups, do a lot of visiting, meet a lot of people, and kind of, carry the message out there somewhat.
That's good. That is good. You have quite a scholarly output, and I know you have another book in progress. I think it also deals with the New Yorker.
Right.
Do you think you're going to be able to carve out enough time to continue doing some serious writing? Not that memos aren't serious.
No, exactly. No, that's the thing. I probably do more writing than ever these days, but it's just not the kind of thing that has a broad audience. I hope so. I think it's very important, even for university and college administrators, to try and keep a hand in something that is more about their personal creativity. It's one of the reasons that I launched into the book project I'm working on right now, which should have been done a couple years ago, but there's never really any time. But it's very refreshing just to go spend a week in an archive and just with raw material, and to sit down and do some writing that's in a different vein than what we do day in and day out. And I also think it's important that the people who work at the university see that the administrators are also capable and interested in creating new knowledge themselves. We talk to them about our expectations. We should be able to, walk the walk, if you will. So I hope so.
Interesting. Good. Now, I know that the majority of your time will necessarily be off campus, but do you ever see yourself in the classroom again?
I hope so. I want to. I probably won't commit right away because I don't want to. The last thing I want to do is get overextended right off the bat. But I think that one of the ways that you can, make sure that you're connecting to students is to be in the classroom. Mm-hmm. There's various ways to do it, but the best way to do it is actually teach a class, as you know. And so I would hope that my goal at Maryland had been to teach one class a year. Mm-hmm. I've been pretty good about that. I've taught 5 or 6 in my 8 years. I think that it would be wonderful. I'd love to be able to teach a freshman seminar one year and then maybe a senior seminar the following year, and to toggle back and forth. But we'll have to see, but that would be a goal.
Okay, that's very good. Any other scholarly writing projects on the horizon in addition to the one you're working on the New Yorker? Any others down the pike?
Oh, I have some things in mind. I never actually intended to become sort of the house historian for the New Yorker, but the New Yorker holds such an important role in terms of American letters and journalism that it sort of fit my discipline, and I got to know a lot of the older New Yorker people, so there might be another book or two in that vein. No one's ever really written a biography, for instance, of William Shawn, who was the second and longest-serving editor of the New Yorker and an incredibly important figure in American letters, and very colorful in his own surprising way. I don't know whether I would be the one to do that. That would be a fun project, but it's hard to think down the road that far right now.
That surely is, I'm sure. What kind of personal adjustments do you think that you're going to have to make as you assume your new position? Just in terms of coming from essentially a public institution, a large public institution, to a smaller private institution with a different mission and a different history. What are some of the challenges for you?
Well, that'll be a big challenge. I mean, I'm less worried about making the transition from the big public to a small liberal arts college, in part because my own education was
your background.
I'm sort of comfortable there, and I feel comfortable with this community. I'm a product of this kind of community myself. The larger issue, I think, is moving from the world of journalism, a discipline I know very well, and journalism education, which I have come to know very well, to the larger academic environment. Mm-hmm. I've gotten to the point where I'm quite conversant with advancement and enrollment management and resident life and things like that. But I've never been responsible for the sciences. Mm-hmm. I stopped taking math classes when I was a sophomore. So I think just the notion of being able to function intelligently as the president in an environment where you have all this, this incredible spectrum of intellectual activity is going to be both exciting and challenging for me. I think my learning curve, is going to be more on that side. I think that I'm less worried about the scale of the institution because my feeling is good students are good students, good faculty are good faculty, and you certainly have both here. So it's more getting, I think, a handle on how the place works, I guess.
I've always argued that there's not a lot of difference actually between public and private in terms of structure, because of the fact that, whether you're a private institution or a public institution, you really have to fundraise. You
That's
have to
right.
worry about revenue generation.
That's right.
And even public institutions are increasingly less dependent upon state support because there's less state support. So those differences, I think, are exaggerated sometimes more than.
Well, it's the case anymore that at the big publics, with states retrenching in terms of their institutional support, that, I think a lot of people are surprised to find that many major public institutions get less than, 15% of their total funding from the state. And so they're, in effect, becoming private institutions. Sure. So I don't think, some of my priorities that I have as a journalism dean are going to be terribly different from the priorities, the set of priorities I have here.
Yeah. There's a kind of a joke in public higher education which essentially says that we used to be state supported, then we were state assisted, now we're state recognized.
Right, that's right.
That's the way it's going.
Exactly right.
Now, one of the nice things about your appointment, I think it comes at a time when there are a few months of transition between President Hynes and yourself. How do you envision that working out from your point of view?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that, President Hynes, it was very clear when I started to do my homework about St. Norbert that he's had a tremendous impact here, awful lot of positive developments. It took a very solid foundation himself and really built on it, and I want to thank him for that, because I think he is leaving the presidency, he's leaving the institution in terrific shape. He also has been personally very gracious to me and to Debbie, and we're thankful for that. We've had several very substantive conversations already. He has been happy to answer any question I might have, no matter how sensitive, and that means more than I can say. My two main things in moving ahead will be, A, to be very sensitive to the fact that he's still the president until he's not, so I don't want to get in his way or presume. But B, to call on him. I'm sure that we've already talked about having a succession of conversations to go into more depth about some of the things that we have talked about only in passing so far. So, in other words, he's going to be mentoring me for a while in this transition.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing, because I think succession planning includes a transition that's smooth and thoughtful.
I feel very fortunate that they moved this quickly, because it does afford us that kind of time to, the passing of the baton, if you will.
I think so too. I simply want to remind our viewers that you're watching Conversations from St. Norbert College. Our special guest this evening is Mr. Thomas Kunkel, who will become the 7th president of St. Norbert's College this summer. I want to ask you what you think are some of the things that are expected of a college president these days as opposed to 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I think the role has changed dramatically.
There's no question. The demands, I think, on a president at a college are look much more like, I think, almost a CEO. Mm-hmm. And that's not, as you know, I don't have a conventional academic background, but I do think I have a lot of the characteristics that colleges are looking for these days. I mean, extensive management experience, dealing with different kinds of personnel, dealing with budgets, fundraising, as you say, public relations, communication skill. I mean, I come out of a media background. I'm hopeful that will help advance, the profile, elevate the profile of St. Norbert,
sure it will.
Perhaps, and I think, and that's part of the package that you want in a president these days. I think a lot of people, still sort of have this notion of, the grove of academe, and everybody takes the summer off, and I don't have to tell you, it's pretty much 24/7, and that's great. It's very exciting, but it's not what a lot of people think it is.
How would you distinguish between, people talk about they want a leader, but the leader also has to be a manager, particularly of a corporation that's as large as a college. It's a complex organization with a considerable budget. How do you make that distinction between leader and manager?
Well, it's a huge distinction, and it means everything. I think that there are a lot of good managers in the world, and you are very fortunate. You have many of them at St. Norbert, that's clear. Leaders, I think, are rarer. I don't know whether I am one or not, but I guess we'll see.
Find out.
I think that, but leaders are crucial because institutions, are just an assemblage of human beings, and human beings, they don't want a lot. I mean, they want to be respected, they want to be paid fairly, they want to be treated fairly, they want to be listened to, but they also want to work at a place that represents their values and is moving in a direction that they agree with. Mm-hmm. And I think the ingredient that holds all that together is leadership. And if you have leadership, things just kind of fall into place, and people kind of tend to row together because they're confident in where they're going, confident that they're not going to be misled or led astray. And I think if you don't have leadership, it's a little bit like a symphony, without a conductor. You may recognize the song, but no one may be really satisfied at the coherence or the quality of it. So I would, the leader is the one that's supposed to, point in the direction, articulate the vision, and I've been fortunate in my career to have worked for some terrific people that I consider great leaders, and I hope I've carried away a lesson or three. Mm-hmm. But that's the trick.
Yeah. Well, some people have argued that the president is the chief storyteller for the institution.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself having a comfort in that role?
Absolutely, and I think there's something to be said for portraying it that way. The trick, one of the hard things about an institution is conveying what is this institution all about? Not just what is it, mm-hmm. but what does it stand for? What does it do? What are its values? Why is it important? Why should I give money to it? Why should I send my son or daughter to it? Mm-hmm. And if you are not conveying clearly what this institution is all about, you're going to have problems with all those things. So it's absolutely the role of the president, I think, to be the person that's out there defining and articulating what this institution is all about, and then working on campus to make sure that you're backing up what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. That you're living what you're saying.
Absolutely.
You're holding ultimately. Just wondering, given your background in the media, do you anticipate being a regular contributor to the media in terms of maybe op-ed pieces or thought pieces that might go forward with regard to issues in higher education?
I would hope so. I like to write about higher education in part because since I'm not really a product of it from a career standpoint, my perspective is sometimes off kilter, and I think that can often be helpful. Just I think about things a little differently than I think a lot of people who are sort of academic careerists would. Mm-hmm. I love to write. I think that a president of a college or university is a de facto public figure. You're sort of in the arena, and people want to know what you think about things. And so I would hope to be able to do that, and not only because I want to, but as part of my responsibility to sort of articulate the values of the institution.
Very good. People talk about the fact that we have a financial endowment, but very few people talk about an institution's moral endowment.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we could... Do you feel the weight of this at all with Abbott Pennings as the first president for 55 years? I mean, that's a long time for a president to serve. I mean, you're coming into an institution as the seventh president with a 110-year history.
It's unbelievable, really.
And, does that weigh upon you at all?
It's a little daunting. But mostly I'm grateful for the foundation of the 6 presidents who have gone before, because this job won't be easy, but it will be considerably easier for the fact that they did such a good job. The only pressure I really feel is to do right by the people that have put their confidence in me. We have been so warmly received.
That's good.
And there's so much enthusiasm that the last thing we would want to do is let anybody down. So we'll work hard. We'll try to work smart. We'll try to work within the values that have been established by our predecessors to fulfill that moral endowment. But it's not just the president. I take comfort in the fact that people like you, terrific division heads here, I think they're going to make sure that the president doesn't step off the cliff.
Stays on track.
I'm counting on that.
That's good. I was going to ask you something a little bit different. when you were on campus this week, you took the time to address the community, but you did it in a very unusual way. You did it as a third-person narrative.
Oh.
And I wonder if you'd just share with the audience a little bit of that narrative, which I personally found quite fascinating, and I think the audience might enjoy it. A little bit of that, a little taste of that.
Well, I talked a little bit about how, when I was a teenager at 16, quite by accident, I stumbled into the world of journalism. I was invited in, never having thought this was what I was going to do. And in that talk, I sort of, I talked about our young protagonist and the world that he entered, and to be rubbing elbows with, President Carter and John F. Kennedy Jr. and Tom Wolfe and Father Benedict Groeschel, and to be in the cemetery when they buried Elvis, and news is such a great world, and I just feel like this young man, this teenager, then he became a young adult, given this opportunity, it was just a marvelous experience, and then, sort of, it was quite by accident that I got into higher education. In a sense, my whole life has sort of been a series of, you might say accidents, but I would say serendipitous opportunities. And I'm forever grateful for that, because it's been a wonderful life. It's kept it fresh. It's kept me challenging myself, which I think is something that everybody needs to do. So, I was trying to give them a sense of where I came from and why I do look a little bit different, but I hope also why maybe I'm equipped to do the job they've asked me to do.
I thought it was a very nice narrative and very helpful
Thank you.
Terms of helping us understand you and your background as well.
Thank you.
And I'll just remind our viewers again that you're watching Conversations from St. Norbert College. Our special guest this evening is Mr. Thomas Kunkel, who will become the 7th president of St. Norbert College this summer. You are aware that last year the Carnegie Commission reclassified us.
Yes.
As you know, we were considered a comprehensive institution, undergraduate baccalaureate institution in the Midwest, ranked often 3rd or 4th.
Right.
They reclassified us as a national liberal arts college.
Right.
It came as a bit of a surprise to us, but it was a happy surprise. It wasn't an unhappy surprise. And they put us at a certain point in those rankings, which are a little bit below the 100, top 100.
Right.
And so our goal will obviously be to get into the top 100.
Right.
So I was just wondering what thoughts you have about that, realizing this is all new to you to some extent in terms of our goals and our ambitions. But what might you see as some of the ways in which we could position ourselves to be in that top 100?
Well, the first thing I would say, Mike, is that I think that was a really good development. It not only was an acknowledgement of the great work that has been happening here, but I think it positions St. Norbert to be on the radar of 17-year-olds all around the country who maybe would not have known about it when they're on their computer and they're trying to figure out, what are this, I want to go to this kind of school. I think because of this repositioning, St. Norbert is going to pop up in a way that it would not have before. I think that gives us an incredible opportunity to reach some really bright students who might be, in New York or Colorado or Texas, whereas traditionally, you've drawn from Wisconsin and then, the Twin Cities, Chicago, and that sort of thing. I think that's an opportunity for us. And one of the ways I think we and then to answer your question about how do you notch up into that top 100 or whatever, there's a couple ways to go about it. But one of the things is to use this sort of higher profile to make national media more aware of what you're doing. I mean, and just for instance, the unique role of mission and heritage here,
yes, it is,
sets you apart even from other Catholic institutions. I was just talking to, the Vice President of Mission and Heritage earlier today, and he was saying that just in the last few days, several other Catholic institutions have called and said, how did you guys manage to do that? So you got a great story to tell. Again, to get back to this storytelling idea. So I think, if we grow our enrollment a little bit, grow our endowment some, get a little bit, a few more students at the upper strata, if we build on a strong curriculum and do some, more compelling things, the Communio first year living learning experience, which is going into its second year, is something that will be very distinctive. I think these things will come together. I don't know. I mean, I think if we're smart, it would not be that difficult to move us that 20 places or whatever it be to get in that top 100. And what does that mean? Again, to some extent it's arbitrary, but it's also essentially, it's just putting you on more radars.
Yes.
and I think that's very important.
Well, a huge part of that, of course, is what other institutions think of you, how they
Exactly,
perceive you.
your reputation.
And if we can, in fact, enhance that, it will help our rating.
That's exactly right.
That's good. Now, I assume you, like I, when I came here, had to learn a lot about the Norbertines because it was not an order with which I was familiar. And
Right.
so the Premonst tensions were simply not part of my background. So you've had a chance now to interact with them in formal and informal ways. And what have you taken away from that? What do you feel you now know about the Norbertines that you didn't know before?
Well, I didn't know very much before. I'd heard of the order, but didn't know much about them. And it's been a thoroughly delightful experience to get to know them. I mean, in this process, I now have gotten personally quite familiar with 8 to 10 of the Norbertines, I would say. Just had dinner at the Abbey at Vespers prayers last night, and it's just been a delight. They're not only terrific men, fun to be around, prayerful but worldly at the same time. But their commitment to this college, I mean, they're just incredibly proud of St. Norbert College. They care about it. They're involved in it, and at the same time, they respect it's an academic institution. I don't think they try and tell you your job, and I don't think they have tried to tell President Hynes his job. So I think that they've created a terrific balance here. And I think the fact that the college, is embracing that tradition. And that unique charism they have of meditation and yet outreach, I think is great. I think it works beautifully in the educational environment.
Yes, it does.
And I think it's something that we not only want to take advantage of, but in taking advantage of it, we can, again, back to what we were talking about earlier, we can really sort of use that to position ourselves, in terms of other schools. But I have to say that just getting to know them has been really a pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to that aspect of this job.
I hope that you and your wife Deborah can make some year the Norbertine Heritage Tour, which occurs each spring now, and we travel, as you know, to half a dozen, 7 or 8 abbeys in Europe, and it really is retracing the steps of Norbert.
Yeah,
it's quite an experience. I hope that you'll be able to work that into
Well,
your
we're
schedule.
very interested in that. We've heard that's gotten rave reviews,
It is.
I don't think you'll have to twist our arms too hard on that.
And the people that go as a group are very friendly, very very thoughtful of each other, and it seems it's a very pleasant experience. So I hope you'll work that in.
Good.
You've been very active in national journalism and communication organizations. As you move into this presidency, do you see yourself as becoming now active in more higher education associations and more visible in those roles as well?
I would hope so. I enjoy that, but more to the point, it's been an incredible education for me. I mean, when I got involved in accrediting journalism schools, you go into other programs, you pop the hood, and you prowl around in there. It's an unbelievable opportunity to sort of really appreciate the roots of what you're doing. I also think that along the way, then that also enhances it elevates the profile of your institution, makes more people aware of who you are, what the school is doing. They get a sense of the cool things that are happening with your curriculum, say, and and that, again, that builds the reputation that is at the core of these national rankings. So, I would expect to. I would want to. I hope they don't grab me right off the top, give me a chance to sort of figure out what's going on the campus. But if it plays the form within 2 or 3 years, I would expect to start getting pretty active in those organizations.
Good. Do you have a particular plan for keeping balance in your life between all these various strands that will be pulling at you?
Well, I have to say that one of the things that's very appealing about this job is that, my wife, Debbie, we've been married 32 years, and we've always been partners, of course, but I think there's no partnership quite like a president and a president's spouse in terms of, working together, representing the institution, outreach and that kind of thing. And we're really excited about the opportunity to sort of have these simpatico career goals, if you will. A lot of people have asked me if I play golf, and after a fashion, I'm looking forward to doing that. I like to read. I like to get outdoors. But as you know, it's hard.
Because the presidency is a 24/7
You
job,
can be pinned down, and you just have to make the time. But the balance is important. To be honest with you, I mean, just the fact of being in an environment where there's just an overriding sense of spirituality, is going to be very welcome, because there's something about this place that causes you to step back, take a breath, and be reflective, and think about the things that are more important than what's on your desk.
I think that's very, very much a part of our culture here. So we're very delighted to have you and your wife, Deborah, as part of our community. So welcome again.
Thank you, Mike.
I'd like to thank our special guest, Mr. Thomas Kunkel, President-elect of St. Norbert College, for allowing us to get to know him a little better this evening. So please join us for future programs as we continue our exploration of the world of ideas. Until then, I'm Michael Marsden for Conversations from St. Norbert College.